Hey, friends. In order to feed my continuing fascination with North Korea, I have been reading information on Kenji Fujimoto. He was the personal Japanese sushi chef to Kim Jong il, who was Kim Jong un, the current dictator's father. I can only find a copy in French, so my husband has been using his AI to translate it for me. So there may be some errors in the AI translation. I know I have a few French speaking viewers. If y'all see any errors, please correct me in the comments. I would so appreciate it. Kenji Fujimoto is a really wild character and honestly, in my personal opinion, seems to be of dubious morality. And we don't know currently if he is still alive. He chose to return to North Korea after Kim Jong un came into power. He said it was because he believed, based on a conversation he had with Kim Jong un while his father was still alive, that Kim Jong un was going to bring more fairness and prosperity to North Korea. But he hasn't been seen in public since 2019, and there are a lot of rumors and suspicions that he might have irritated Kim Jong un and no longer be with us. His writing gives really fascinating insights, though, to the early formation of the North Korea that we have today and the influences that were around Kim Jong un when he was a child. In the prologue here, I think you will see what I mean, friends and comrades, about the dubious nature of Kenji Fujimoto's morality because he already knew everything about Kim Jong il at this time whenever he wrote this. So let's take a listen, friends. This foreword here was written in October 2008, and in it, Kenji Fujimoto is talking about the rumors at the time that Kim Jong il had died. He didn't actually die till quite a bit later, but there were a lot of rumors and propaganda going around about his health. Here's what Kenji wrote. This text brings together the cook of Kim Jong il and the private life of Kim Jong il, my two previous books published respectively in June 2003 and July 2004 in Japan. This new edition has been updated because I felt I had not sufficiently shared with my readers my experiences lived in North Korea. I arrived in this country in 1982. And apart from a few periods outside the territory, I worked alongside Kim Jong il for a total of 13 years, until April 24th, 2001, when Secretary General Kim Il sung died in 1994. I was appointed advisor to the party's Secretariat Bureau of the Korean Workers' Party, despite my Japanese nationality. I believe I am the only foreigner in the world to have held such a position with so many responsibilities within the party. Having spent my life at the heart of this enigmatic country, I was able to write this book from my intimate diary. Although it was confiscated upon my two repatriations, I ignored the prohibition to keep one and continued to write it discreetly. I hope many readers will read this book, as the mystery surrounding North Korea remains as great as ever. For a long time, there were plans regarding Kim Jong il's health, with some claiming he had died in 2003. If this information had been accurate, the man the Japanese prime minister met at the time, would he have been a double in 2004? Or was the text that a double had taken his place and really just wishful thinking on the part of a foreign head of state? The images of Kim Jong il's broadcast during this meeting showed the same person I had known for 13 years. Since this was not reported in the national media, the Japanese press was quick to draw hasty conclusions. Meanwhile, the spokesperson for South Korea had announced that Kim Jong il was still alive, and I preferred to believe the latter. I am telling myself that he had certainly had a health problem. And even if North Korea was designated by US President George W. Bush as one of the three countries of an axis of evil, it was quite reasonable to conclude that a leader's death was a figment of the suspicious and fantasies of certain people. We were told that a medical team from Europe had let this information slip. But that seems entirely implausible to me. The specialists who traveled to North Korea to treat Kim Jong il's family charged exorbitant medical fees and were naturally paid in cash to keep quiet. In fact, nothing in their contract requires them to make revelations, even if a microphone was slipped in. On the contrary, they would be the biggest gossips. The media claiming that Kim Jong il could no longer get out of bed were at their peak, as if they had seen it themselves. The other baseless claims in the information bulletins to Japan outraged me, but I must admit I was worried about him. If it were still possible, I would love to find myself in front of Kim Jong il once more and prepare sushi for him. This kind of idea sometimes comes to mind in my sleep, and I even dream of going to Tsukiji. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, friends. It's Tsukiji. To buy him delicious fish. Several times I kissed his cheek. Who else could live through things like that? I think I was the only one. During the banquets, as soon as the alcohol started to loosen up, he would say to me, Fujimoto, ora, come. I would then take small steps towards him, and as soon as I filled his glass, he would do the same for me. We would clink glasses, and then he would always ask, Fujimoto, do you love me? I would, of course, answer yes. And then he would point to his cheek so that I would kiss it right there and give him a peck. Leaning a fist into his throat, he would then say, all right, Fujimoto, I understand. On the other hand, if you betray me, that's it. I finally betrayed his trust and fled Japan. If I had stayed, maybe I would have actually been strangled. In 2003, I remember fully preparing for the consequences by publishing The Cook of Kim Jong il. With this text, I hope to pass on a bit of my experience in North Korea to my readers. Kenji Fujimoto, October 2008. So I think you see what I mean there, friends. By this time, Kenji Fujimoto had spent a large amount of years literally living with Kim Jong il and saw some really horrific things. And he's talking about dreaming of wanting to go back and prepare him sushi and kiss his cheek while he's ill. And I just find that really odd and strange. What do y'all think, friends? Am I reaching there? Am I right? Okay, moving on to our first chapter. The first chapter is titled, Would You Like to Open a Sushi Restaurant in North Korea? One day in June 1982, while I was working as a sushi chef, I received a call from the president of Itabashi Cooks Association. He asked me straight out, Would you like to work in North Korea? It's a request from the Japan North Korea Chamber of Commerce. They're actively looking for a sushi master and are very annoyed that no one is stepping up. Their salary is 500,000 yen per month. A salary of 500,000 yen. I was stunned by the amount, even though at the time I knew almost nothing about North Korea and it had no diplomatic relations with Japan. Plus, if I were to go and live in a country like that, I wondered if I could ever come home. Before hanging up, I replied that I'd first like to discuss it with my family and ask for a few days to think it over. That evening, when I got home, the whole world seemed to oppose the opportunity. I was worried. My eldest daughter, 8 years old, burst into tears. Looking back today, I think I had already made up my mind to leave for North Korea at that very moment. How many times did I have to explain to my reluctant relatives that the monthly salary was 500,000 yen and I would return to Japan in about 5 months? I added that I would be back quickly since the contract only lasted 1 year. Even though there was no Japanese embassy on site, only a diplomatic representation, I wasn't too worried because if anything happened, they would protect me. In short, despite the reluctance, I finally managed to convince my family. The next day, I went to the Japan North Korea Chamber of Commerce with the president of the association. We were received in the director's office. After signing my contract, he gave me 300,000 yen for travel preparations. Then I immediately began the procedures for my passport. In the room, there was another man, a chef, following traditional Japanese style. According to the director, the plan was to open a restaurant in Pyongyang in front of the hotel. From what I could look up, friends, according to the exchange rate in 1982, 500,000 yen a month would have been about 2,000 US dollars. Extremely good salary in 1982, especially for a place like North Korea. It was also, from what I understand, more than double the average chef salary for a Japanese chef at the time. Apparently, a Japanese chef salary at the time was 200,000 yen a month. The next chapter is called A Lavish Welcome Evening. And the first word I'm not sure if I can pronounce. Pothonggang. Pothonggang proposed sushi in Japanese cuisine with a karaoke bar in the name and sangwon had already been decided. We were then explained that we would live in this hotel for the duration of the contract. Obtaining a specific passport for North Korea would take a month. So in the meantime, the chef and I went to buy the porcelain and other kitchen utensils necessary for opening the restaurant. The big departure day arrived in August 1982. I said goodbye to my family, who accompanied me, not without worry, to the departures hall of Tokyo Narita Airport, where I was abruptly overwhelmed by anxiety. Was North Korea really without danger? Could I return to Japan safe and sound? At that moment, I wouldn't have imagined for a second that I was preparing sushi in front of Kim Jong il. To reach our destination, we had to pass through the Chinese capital. In Beijing, we were taken to the North Korean embassy to apply for our visa. We spent the night on site. I was so excited and stressed at the same time that I couldn't close my eyes. The next day, we boarded the North Korean airline Air Koryo to finally fly to Pyongyang. The plane quickly entered the country's airspace. All while observing the landscape beneath my eyes, I told myself, so this is North Korea. I'm finally slipping under the veil of this unknown country. And I was once again submerged by an indescribable feeling of mingled fear. An hour and a half after leaving Beijing, as we descended towards Sunan Airport in Pyongyang, I caught sight of military vehicles parked on the runways. Images of the Korean War came back to mind. Chills ran through my body. Upon arrival, many members of the trade house were there to welcome us and take us by bus to the Pothonggang Hotel. Once there, they gave us instructions to settle in. From what I understand, it doesn't sound like he was in dire financial straits, so it kind of weirds me out how Kenji Fujimoto seems to have completely discounted his family's concern. What do y'all think, friends? The next chapter is titled Inauguration of Ansangwan. The very next day, we went to our future workplace, the Ansangwan restaurant. It was located about 200 meters from our hotel, but there was nothing resembling what I had expected. As I looked around in bewilderment, a man who claimed to be the site manager approached me. He asked, "So, would you like to draw up a plan for preparing the sushi?" I replied, pointing to a spot quite far away with a view of a pond. "This place will suit me." "All right, please draw a plan." I was truly stunned. I never imagined they would ask me such a task even before starting. I was convinced the restaurant would be ready upon our arrival. Next to the karaoke bar, there was already a head waiter and hostess leading a team of 2 Japanese and 7 Thai women. I sympathized with them when they told me they had been kidnapped before being brought here. They had followed their recruiters who had offered them jobs in Japan, but ended up in North Korea after failing. They were earning $1,500 a month and were allowed to keep all their tips from prostitution. Resigned, they sadly admitted they could do nothing more. Later, the director of the Japanese North Korean Chamber of Commerce came to visit us during a stopover in Pyongyang. He had heard about prostitution at Ansangwan and slammed his fist on the table, saying, "If it's a restaurant where women are prostituted, I will recommend no one else." That put an end to this parallel trade. My first 2 months in the capital thus flew by at full speed. So, this is what I mean, friends. Kenji Fujimoto knew everything by the time he left about how horrific it was for people. He started knowing right away. He immediately describes that the Thai women at the restaurant told him they were kidnapped and all they could do to take care of themselves was keep their tips from prostitution. The next chapter is called Preparing Sushi in Front of Kim Jong Il. On October 21st, the Ansangwan manager suddenly asked me to gather enough ingredients to serve sushi to about 20 people, and in the crowd, 3 Mercedes Benz are parked in front of the restaurant. The head chef, 2 Japanese, and 4 Thais get into the car with me. After driving for almost 2.5 hours, we arrive in front of an elegant 5 or 6 story building by the sea. I later learned that it was in the private domain of Wonsan. We had been invited to rest a bit in our rooms, but despite everything, I am allowed to ask. I would like to advance in the preparations. There are many excellent cooks here, my interpreter Rim Sing John explained to me. If you wish, they can get to work on the field and you can thus rest quietly. Someone had come looking for us around 22 o'clock. Arriving in the kitchens, about 20 men were busy, and Rim Sing John had told me, "I'm giving you 5 assistants, order them anything you want." I immediately began training these North Korean kitchen assistants. We first prepared the vinegared rice for sushi, but it was too sticky, no doubt due to its quality. I quickly realized it wasn't suitable. This rice was still of higher quality than Sasanashiki, a highly reputed Japanese hybrid rice, so I decided to redo the preparation with koshinakari, another rice directly imported from Japan. Once everything was ready, I calmly waited until 2 in the morning to be invited to join the banquet hall. A good 20 people were seated there. The space where I was to prepare the sushi was at the far left end of a U-shaped oblong table. A brand new wooden board had been installed there. Standing at my post, I greeted everyone before diving into the sushi. Then the waiters distributed the plates to each of the guests. It was that moment that a man addressed me in Korean. "What is this?" translated Rim St. John for me. "Tuna belly toro," I announced, and the interpreter repeated for me in Korean, "Tarano toro imida." It's tuna belly. "Tarano toro, one more," the stranger said to me, turning towards me. The next day, for the wedding anniversary of a military chef, a grand party at sea was organized on a boat. The guests were in very good spirits and kept throwing one more at me after another. I prepared in succession toro, hamachi, kampachi, and even shimaji. All while pressing the sushi between my fingers, I told myself that these people especially loved fatty fish. A good hour and a half passed like this on the waves. On land, they all rewarded me with "good job," and back in the kitchen, the man, who must have been the evening's organizer, handed me an envelope of 50,000 yen. Before leaving, I invited Japanese women who had accompanied me from the start to join me in my room. For the Thai hostess, I didn't look any farther, but my compatriots, I couldn't let them do it. As a Japanese, my duty was to look after them since we had arrived there at the same time. I fell asleep just before dawn and finally went to the kitchens for lunch around noon. The banquet from the previous evening was completely cleared away, and I glimpsed through the window the carefully swept garden as well as the sea. Gazing vaguely at the landscape behind the windows, I reflected on the events of the evening I had just experienced, and a strange feeling crossed me. A little later, the three Japanese women and the Thais came down together. I then immediately asked Katai, the oldest in the group, what had happened after the banquet. She had stayed in Japan several times and spoke a bit of my language. According to her, a violinist concert had started shortly after my departure. Among the musicians, some had played lying on the floor. She said everything ended around 7:30 in the morning. The party lasted all night. I then asked her if they had sexual relations, and she simply answered no. I'm kind of confused, friends, about his story on inviting the women to his room because from everything else I've heard, it sounds like that wouldn't have been something that was allowed. But it also sounds like he had a lot of privilege right away. So who knows? Let me know what y'all think in the comments. The next page says, when I returned to Pyongyang in the early afternoon, the Japanese head hostess was holding the Choson symbol and pointing to the photo of the man on the front page. Ah, that man was there last night. No doubt the one who had repeatedly asked for Toro was Kim Il sung's son. That is, Kim Jong il. My heart started beating even faster. I had worked in front of this terrifying figure. At that time, Kim Il sung was still running the country, but his son was first in line to succeed him. Without even knowing it, I had prepared sushi on his personal boat and under his very eyes, and he had loved them. 10 days later, I was called again, and Mercedes Benz came to pick me up as before. But the Berline got stuck in a restricted area inside Pyongyang itself, protected by a massive security system. I later learned that this place was an official residence called Banquet Room Number 8. The counter, installed right in front of Kim Jong il's seat, was my workspace for the evening. About 20 guests were present. After an hour and a half, Kim Jong il, probably satisfied, casually tossed a white envelope my direction. It brushed past me without falling to the ground. I didn't pick it up. I didn't particularly feel like recovering something, no doubt a tip, that had been thrown at me like that. Ram St. John rushed over to do it in my place and handed me the envelope. I was annoyed, but I still bowed before leaving the room. Coming to North Korea, I was like any foreign worker, driven only by the goal of making money. However, I didn't find myself in a difficult financial situation to the point of picking up a tip thrown on the floor. For me, that would have been like begging. Wounded in my dignity, I brooded in the dark thinking about that scene. About a week later, I was called for a second time to banquet room number 8. When I started preparing the sushi, I was greeted by Kim Jong il, who had just presented his excuses. I'm sorry for the other day. Forgive me. He had been told that his attitude had annoyed me, and he was now coming to make amends. Faced with this reversal, how should I behave? I was stubborn and maybe a bit angry for not being a big shot. In front of him, I felt so small that I wanted to be terribly wanted. I feel like I'm breaking in here, friends, to say I feel like the AI is a little awkward here and there with the translation. So, like I said, any corrections in the comments are welcome. After this episode, Kim Jong il systematically gave me the envelope containing the tips in my hand. Inside, there were 50,000 yens. In 1982, Kim Jong il ate all the fish I brought from Japan without them being previously checked. This system later changed, since all fish had to first go through the 5th Division, which was in charge of a minute health inspection of all food before authorizing them to be consumed. What do y'all think about his story of refusing to bend over and pick up the envelope, friends? I feel like he might be exaggerating there, but who knows? He already knew Kim Jong il's reputation by this point. He knew that some of the people there were kidnapped. It seems like a bit of maybe exaggeration. I don't know. But then again, I do think there are other stories of Kim Jong il making exceptions to get, the luxury things he wants. So who knows? I apologize, friends, for any awkward pronunciations on the names of the Japanese foods or anything like that. Next chapter is a North Korean millionaire in Ensengwan. November has finally arrived and the restaurant finally opens its doors. A sushi meal costs 3,000 yen per person, an exorbitant price in North Korea, but the customers, North Koreans who had lived in Japan, come from all over and had the air of appreciating the cooking time. One of them was almost daily, accompanied by 2 or 3 people. This man, named Hoshimi, was a millionaire having resided in Japan. Examining the restaurant's monthly accounts, one could reach 2,500,000 yens for him alone. In Pyongyang, there were many citizens who had lived for a time in Japan. Everyone said it was very difficult to return there. Indeed, they had to pay the government an important sum of at least 100 million yens to be able to leave the territory. North Korea prides itself on socialism, so why does this country give so much importance to paying such an amount? This was, however, the reality. The next chapter is called First Handshake with Kim Jong il. End of 1982, I decided to definitively return to Japan to celebrate the new year. Just before presenting, Kim Jong il had called my services 12 times, and the total amount of tips amounted to 600,000 yens. The passage of the new year, celebrated on January 1st, is the most important family holiday in Japanese society. My travel allowances of 600,000 yen and the sum of my restaurant salaries at 800,000 yen, so I had received 2 million yen or 16,000 euros. I spent almost a month in Japan and returned to North Korea in late January. Kim Jong il questioned my return. Passing through the teppanyaki space, I arrived in banquet room number 8 that I now knew like the back of my hand. I was then very surprised. A brand new display case for storing ingredients was on the counter where I usually prepared my sushi. I neatly arranged my fish pieces while waiting for Kim Jong il's arrival. Seeing me, he exclaimed, "Fujimoto, it's been a long time." Then, pointing back to the display case, he asked me, "So, what do you think?" "Delighted to see you again. It's great. Today I will prepare sushi at your convenience. Please let me know your preferences." Tarano Toro, Duno belly. He immediately swallowed the toro I had served him. He added, "Tarano Toro, one more." Delighted, reassured, he threw me his traditional thank you. At that moment, I bypassed the counter to position myself face to face with him. "Then can I shake your hand?" All while staring at me with a wide smile, Kim Jong il firmly gripped my hand. Since I had been on this planet, this was the first time I had touched Kim Jong il's body. My heart was pounding. Y'all see what I mean, friends? Like, he is really in love with the dictator, it feels like. What do y'all think, friends? The next chapter is called May 1983, My Return to Japan. At that time, Kim Jong il was calling my services at least once every 10 days. As soon as I was absent from Ansangwan, my clientele would ask questions and often complain. "Mr. Fujimoto, where are you going?" I was always trying to muddle through because I had been formally forbidden to say that I was working for Kim Jong il and to talk about the places I was going to. During my stay in Japan, I had brought dried udon noodles and soba, and I had been able to add tempura soba or even tanuki. Then we get to page 34, and Kenji says, "Udon dishes highly appreciated by North Koreans who had lived in Japan. Some might even dream of eating soba and udon as delicious here. 1,500 yen per person. It was expensive, but my dishes were quickly sold out. The restaurant was running well, and there you go, 2, 3, 4 months passed quickly. At the beginning of May, a small conflict broke out between the Ansangwan manager and me. On the spot, I thought it was useless to argue with him and to negotiate. I had come to North Korea for 1 year, and I had to return to Japan in July anyway. So I left the country without waiting for the end of my contract, just before the start of the Golden Week of May. Kim Jong il quickly learned that I was planning to return to Japan. At the end of April, he called my services again, and while I was preparing the sushi, he asked me, "So, Fujimoto, you are returning to Japan?" Surprised, I answered without hesitation, "Yes," and he added, "What gift would you like to bring back?" After thinking a short moment, I declared, "I would like some matsutake mushrooms." Kim Jong il was already in the process of giving instructions to Ri Myung Jae, the head of his secretariat office at the time. "Prepare the matsutake and give them to Fujimoto." In fact, this was not really the season for these mushrooms, and I was offered canned matsutake. The night before my return to Japan, the Ansangwan manager, his assistants, as well as the waitresses, organized a farewell party for me. They shed a few tears, saying they would miss me. And then, describing these pictures here, Kenji Fujimoto says, "The general is not in this photo or any of the frames because he took them himself with his new panoramic camera. I am in the second position from the right in front of the large television screen. Kim Jong il loved photographic equipment and wanted to try out the new models as soon as they were released. That day, he offered the same to everyone. I prepared numerous sushi for the teppanyaki space of banquet room number 8. On the right, you can see the display case where I stored my sushi ingredients that Kim Jong il had installed for me. The room served not only as a restaurant, but also as an entertainment venue. The smooth white floor in the foreground was a stage that could light up, equipped with colorful spotlights along the sides. There were even flashing lights in the ceiling like a nightclub. This is where the Joy Brigade sang and danced. I think Joy Brigade was an earlier word for the Pleasure Squad. If y'all know different, correct me in the comments, friends. That is all I have for now. I will be back with another section of the book soon. I hope you enjoy, friends and comrades. Let me know in the comments. Have a good day.